The child rights groups are calling for the Eastern Cape government to declare school shootings in a provincial disaster. A number of schools in the province have raised concerns over the surge of gun violence threatening the lives of pupils as well as teachers. This comes after a toddler was shot while her father was dropping off a sibling at the school. The hotspots for violence outside the schools are Gqeberha, Kariga, as well as Henki, a small town in the Sarah Baartman district. For more on this, let's now speak to Dr. Eileen Carter. She is a provincial manager for the South African Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape. Dr. Carter, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Is the answer really declaring violence around schools a disaster? Will that give the answers that we are required?
Morning, Aldrin, and your viewers. I think when we speak about children's rights, there's a sense of urgency that is awakened inside of us because we know that the best interest of children should remain paramount in any situation. So these issues and these concerns that have been highlighted the past few months really ask of us whether we are doing enough. Now, it does not only speak to the safety concerns of these children, it speaks to their well-being in general when they are moving towards accessing their rights to basic education. So whether calling for a state of disaster is the right option, it remains to be seen. However, we have to call upon all the local authorities to do whatever they can to stop this scourge.
How bad is the situation in the Eastern Cape? News 24 has an article where they listed a number of incidents of violence that have taken place around schools, and one of those also includes an incident where 10 pupils carrying weapons allegedly burst through the school gate in search for a matric pupil, intimidating teachers in the process.
So there's certainly a level of increased reporting on these matters. And that is precisely why the Commission has written to South African Police Service in the province, asking them to increase their efforts, specifically in the areas that you have mentioned this morning. We've also written to the Department of Safety and Security to say that we note that there's a coordination concern sometimes, and that we are asking them to provide us with a comprehensive plan that we can monitor on the ground to make sure that these issues do not escalate further. But we have also written not only to those two stakeholders, like I say, it is a coordination issue. And we've reached out to the Office of the Premier as well, because I'm making reference to the best interests of the children again. We can't certainly wait to see how it escalates. We need to put in safeguards right now.
Yeah. What do you mean a lack of coordination? What's happening?
So sometimes we have the most beautiful legislation and policies on the ground. But the implementation, Aldrin, is lacking. As a country, we know that. Now, you would recall, even recently, the Human Rights Commission released our Enyobeni report. One of the key recommendations we made to the province was that there needs to be an urgent call on all local municipalities to establish what they call the Local Drug Action Committees, the LDACs. Now, that is already called for in terms of the Substance Abuse Act. But what we found is that these committees simply do not exist on the ground. Now, these committees, Aldrin, would respond to drug-related matters. They would coordinate SAP's interventions, especially in local communities as well. And that's precisely why we've now reached out to the Office of the Premier as well to say, well, we don't have your response yet. Have you created and called for an urgent creation of these committees? Because we do feel from a coordination point of view, that may be key.
Yeah, and I think sometimes also what happens is that we come up with all of these initiatives and throw money at the problem. For instance, 1.8 billion rand, the Department of Basic Education says has been set aside for safety in the province. I don't know, sure, this will probably go towards appointing security officers, getting all of the right tools around the school, but it doesn't necessarily deal with the root cause of the problem that the Eastern Cape is facing in general, in that, for instance, we speak about the violence around schools, and earlier yesterday we were speaking about extortion gangs and extortion being demanded, protection fees being demanded from not only businesses but also residents.
No, it's certainly, it looks like it's a community issue at this stage, in the sense that we have to call upon all the stakeholders in these local areas to come to the table and come up with these discussions. But Aldrin, you've indicated, do we need to reinvent the wheel? We have the policies in place. We have the legislation in place. I'm referring to these LDAC committees that can play a very, very valuable role on the ground. And certainly then we also have community policing forums in place. So how about we reinforce our muscle in these local communities and we just pull them closer to each other so that we prevent any further human rights abuses at this stage? We have noted that there's been calls for SAPs to be strengthened, that correctional service, not correctional services, but that the army be called in. But we want everyone to just go back to the drawing board and see what is in place already, and that we do remember that the best interest of the children is paramount in this instance.
What do you make of that call by the ANC in the Eastern Cape that soldiers be deployed to deal with the crime levels?
So what I can do is I can just refer back to the Constitution, that we need to ensure that the safety and security of our people are safeguarded, that we need to ensure that children can access schools. So basic education in terms of Section 29 is an immediately enforceable right. So we must remove any barrier that exists for our children to be able to access this right.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is Dr. Eileen Carter, who is the South African Human Rights Commission's director there in the Eastern Cape. Appreciate your time. I'm going to take a